The title of this talk is A Day in a Life of a Product Designer. The thing is that we don't get to do everything which we are supposed to do as a product designer in a single day. So I thought like I'll make this make this presentation about what and all things which you do as a product designer from and like this is more like a journey which I have gone through how I evolved from a engineer to a game designer to a product designer, and what things which I learned in that phase. That would be something which we could share. I wanted to share this, and this is still a continuing journey, and it's not that it's has completed, and there's a lot more to learn still. We get started. So yeah, I started my career as a software engineer and then evolved into game designer, product designer. And I have officially completed 5 years as a product designer now, more than any other career. So technically I have 3 careers now. And just a summary of how I started. I started just like anyone starts in India. We do Bachelor of Engineering, and that's how I started my career as a software engineer. And the end of my engineering career, I was working with the Innovation Lab, and that's where I worked with many designers, and that's how I realized that design is my inner calling. So I did my masters in design after that, and while doing it masters in design, I found my passion in game design. So I was exploring a lot of different stuffs like brain computer interface and social gaming and casual games, a lot of things before getting into product design. So, as a product designer, I have worked I started with working in two startups, Practo and HelloDog, which is based out of Indonesia. And post that, I have worked in an agency called FM Studios, where I got exposure to a lot of different domains, and that's where I started really learning a lot as a product designer. And now I'm working at Intuit, and it's a like customer obsession is something which I was always looking for, and that's what I'm currently working on. So just to start with, like this was my first project where using brain computer interface as an input to the game. So using thought signals through the commercially available device called Emotive, and using that as an input to the game here. And you can see the Pepsi power up here. So the reason was I was working for an advertising agency as an intern in my internship, and we were pitching it for the game for an Pepsi. So JW was the advertising agency for them, and the concept was that like you can think to make the character run, can jump by just by thinking. However, if you want, if your power ups are low, you can drink Pepsi and then you can get the energy. So that was my first game, and just purely out of passion in technology and the game design. And this was the second one, which was a much cheaper easy device from Eurosky. And this time it was not purely the the mind my thinking but also it's like it was basically a multimodal interaction design project where you could use the tap the calmness of your mind to in order to navigate the game better. So yeah, and that led to my third game, which was a two-player game, and it was also an award-winning game at various game conferences. And this was basically about allowing the like helping the player to achieve their calmness and focus at the same time, which is a very difficult thing to do. So if you are focused enough, it throws the fireballs. If you're calm enough, it creates a defense shield, and you basically become invincible, which was kind of not so easy to achieve. And this was also the game which got awarded Caffeine Connect. And post that, I ditched the BCA technology because that was really not taking me anywhere because it did not make sense business wise because it was great an exploration project, great as an exploration project, but in terms of business, it was not helping me forgetting it. Maybe it made sense as a medical applications, but still the technology was years behind at that point in time. So I was focusing more on the game design, and that's how I was working on some various casual games like polka dots and some games based on the social. Like basically, this could be played on social media, and few iOS and Android, and none of them I could release it. And there was a reason for it because all of them were prototypes and it was pure interaction design. It was not focusing on the other aspects that takes the game, takes any product for that matters to the finish line. So I had so many, almost like 15 vaporwares in a span of 1 year, and passion was like just pure passion was not taking me anywhere. So I joined a job. I got practical and joined a game company called Truva Interactive, and this was my first game called Nanosword. And here I joined as a game designer and game developer. And to begin with, and like it was very important for me because it was my first project that should reach the release or get shipped, and a lot of it depended on the game producer. He was the one who game producer, just in case if you don't know, like game producer is the uh, uh, like product manager equivalent of the games industry, and he takes care of everything, and he's the responsible person to take the product to the finishing line. And I was very attached to the project that I really wanted to make sure everything goes well in this. And he was the one who suggested me to take up user interface design as well. So all the UI for this I did it in Balsamic, and later was enhanced by a graphic designer. And yeah, basically I was donning multiple hats while as a game designer. And unfortunate thing was that yeah, and I since I initially I had joined as a game developer, but I stopped working on the game development part. Later we hired a freelance game developer, and unfortunately the company had a layoff, and the producer whom was very supportive of me was no longer in the company, and there was a void, and then the game was reaching some level of a dead end, and maybe it was may not be released. So I had to be a little flexible, and then I was pushing for release of the game, and that's where I first took the hat of a game producer, a product manager, in a very basic form as it could be. So most important thing was to ensure the game is getting shipped. And me, as a game designer earlier, was a very perfectionist, and that's where I have to let go of my perfectionist tendencies. And it's very important to get the game release, and that's what was the focus of this project. That's what I learned, and then this was my first successful project as a designer. And the second one was a gummy pop, and it's quite important in terms of what I learned, how it helped shape me as a product designer was the precision part of it, or the data aspect of it. Like I always saw game design as a or as a storytelling medium, but the change of perspective from a storyteller to a because storytelling may be important, still relevant, but starting to look it as a product. That was the transition that happened while I was working on this project. So the structure here was very similar, but I was working with the art director, and I was the senior game designer here, and I was working with the developer. But there was no one whom we were. There was no product manager. There was no game producer here, and in fact, everything was driven by data, and it was because it was driven by data, not informed by data. Uh, it failed terribly, and you can see that in my face here. And the kid who is playing this game is the one of these like the son of one of our investors, and he didn't like the game, and that was also very evident from the data that showed up after first release in Philippines, and the second release was in Singapore, and there were hardly like 5% or 6% of people who were crossing the level 10. We had made more than 500 levels of the game, and it did not work at all. And that's when the company decided to set aside data science and use it as a tool, not be driven by it, and got the product manager and again, so the whole idea, like initially I was surprised, like why am I not getting a game producer, why a product designer? product manager here. So, but that's what really saved the game here, and I started looking at the game as a product, and I started looking at data myself, and this is the dashboard which I used to follow every day. And trust me, it was not about the graphics, it was not about the story. It's about the precision, the science of design that is validated through numbers, and it gives a great pleasure uh, as a creator, right? And you could see this is the successful. So earlier numbers were very bad, and this was the finally was a successful one. The benchmark here was Candy Crush, and due to some signs of quest model games, then if the player is reaching, if the 60% of the players reach level 10, it's a successful one. It is bound to make some profit. It's bound to make money in the later levels. And here you can see that like we very well crossed that 68% of the players actually reach level 10. And you could also see the loss percentage spiking up at level 10. That's where it hits you as a player that like it looks like a very simple game. And what makes it so difficult for me that I cannot cross level 10? And it's about like configuring the difficulty. So that's what the numbers started to give a lot more structure to the design which I was doing earlier. And and like I was also very is like like being a designer, you are also a very visceral person. It's the visuals that also matters a lot, and started putting visuals and juxtaposing against the data, and then seeing how much of the visuals or the configuration of the board is making sense to the or making change, affecting the numbers. And this was the Tableau dashboard which we used to see earlier, and a lot of analysis which used to do, and later on, like of course with the new product manager in, so like my creativity in numbers also started.
Fuck you, bitch! Fuck you, bitch! Fuck you, bitch! Fuck you, bitch! Fuck you! Weird! Suck my dick! 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 Suck, suck my dick! Suck my dick! Suck my dick! Suck my dick!
Chandru, can we
Okay.
have this person expelled? I think.
Yeah, that's already done. Yeah, please, we can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you.
Somebody got really excited. Anyway, so this was yeah. So where was I? Huh. So just the plain Tableau dashboard started to make way for a lot more creative ways of looking at data. As you can see, there are a lot of interesting parameters like impression of a challenge and the real challenge. All that start to play out when you are starting looking at data, and then the game really did very well. And like later it faced an eventual decay. That was the eventual like inevitable, but in the first 1 year and 2 year, it was quite successful. And some of the trophies which I have, and I don't have the screenshots here, but is that like people compared this with Candy Crush, and people were playing through all the levels till the end, and there were in-app purchases which people made, and it was quite a successful one. And that was just that was only possible through looking at data. Like otherwise, it would have been a very passion-driven project. So yeah, this was more mashup of more data into that. And here comes interesting part. So while game design is all about configuring difficulties, but there is another side of it, the user experience of it. It is not about making the entire experience too difficult as well. So this was a screen or a pop-up where the user was supposed to move to a next level, and the idea of green play button was just to say that like green button is a desirable color and people will click on it, and that simply did not work because the drop-offs were 52%, where if you look at the context of the game, the most clicked object in the game was red in color. So just by changing the color of the button, it made a big impact on the reducing the dropouts. And further improvements, you can see that there's a lot more improvements, but important thing was the button, like removing the play button to remove the cognitive load, and then making the button of the shape as the same character of the gummy character itself. That was also made a big impact on this. So similarly, there was, and this is another part. So if we were driven by complete, I mean, this is a very important thing which I learned as while I was working here. It's not about data being data driven; it should be data informed. And if you are completely driven by data, like, and that's what most of the games are. Like this one was a very popular game, and it had some of the dark UX patterns very prominent, and you can see the applying Fitts law into such a way that like it force like kind of gets the player to click on the button even if they don't intend to sometimes, and ending up spending money. And that was a very prominent practice, and it's still a very prominent practice in casual games. And this would have been a crime in regular applications, I would say. This was actually a screen from LinkedIn at that in the year 2016. So this was there. Like, as a UX designer, I didn't want to really get into the dark UX pattern, and that's why we designed screens which ensured the intent or purpose of the product was achieved at the same time, not surrendering to the dark UX. So that was the my first introduction to product design. Like working with product managers, and then started seeing game as a product, and then how it evolved. After 3 years and working in two startups and one design agency, and almost completing 15 plus enterprise end-to-end complex projects. So this is my understanding about product design. And you might find a lot of articles and blogs about product. What's the difference between product design, UX designer? What is the process to follow? And all that is like you can always go and find out. But this is my learning so far. What I've seen is that so I started with UI, but then I learned visuals as well, and also found that like content writing or the product writing plays a very important part in telling the story in the best possible manner. And there's a much deeper layer below the UI design. You can see the information architecture and the task flows that forms the UX design part of it. But usually that's what is the full thing, and all that comes from user needs and business requirements. Product design is kind of an like umbrella for the UX design is usually seen as an umbrella term for all the things design. Product design is probably much bigger umbrella for that than that. So I'll just take you through an example of another project which I worked on. This was with a company called Capillary Technologies. I was a design consultant through FM Studios, and this was a flagship product, which was into the domain of digital marketing for all the offline store sales. And basically all the SMS which you get. So all these are very targeted ones and very specific ones. These are sent by these a lot of these companies who have their offline stores or retail stores. And how do they send these SMS through any marketing tool? And the Engage Plus was one of them. And here's the problem which the client came to us. The client said that they have only 5% of the companies who are actually using the product. In fact, every customer of this client, the Capillary was our client, FM Studios client, and Capillary's clients were these companies. All of them saw the value in the product, but they were not finding it useful. They were finding it useful, but they were not finding it usable. And that was making them to like have a very big bloated CX team, customer success team, who are using the product on their behalf. And that was causing an impediment for them to grow bigger into the larger markets, bigger markets. So here's the requirement was to make the product usable enough so that their customers start using the product. So looking at the existing UI, so these were some of the main screens of the Engage Plus product. And an expert analysis of that. We did a month-long analysis at various levels. We found that there are a lot of things that are missing when at a surface, like in illustrations, animation, which tells the story of the product, and product writing and other things were there. Like navigation was good. Uh, I would say it was there, but still a lot of things needs to be
I think there's some connection problem at Karthik's end. Is it same for you as well, Chandra?
Yes. Yeah. We lost. I think Karthik, we lost you for some time.
okay. When did you lose me? Here?
No, on the previous one.
Okay. This one?
Yeah.
Okay. So after almost a month-long analysis of the entire product Engage Plus, we saw that like there were a lot of areas that needs an improvement, and of course there were some low-hanging fruits also. If we just made that change, we could have uh, cost a big ROI. A lot of customers would transition to a self-serve model. However, the goal was not only that; it was to ensure the product was correct and scalable for future as well, and was robust enough for any new features coming in the future. And it was important to solve the problem the right way. And the biggest thing which we found was like there was some issue with the information hierarchy here. And as you can see, I'll just take you through that. So I'll explain about what problem we solved here. But here's the secret sauce of any great application that is intuitive. So user may have a need or requirement, and they have a certain mental model about the problem or the world, right? And the system that is solving the problem for them, it has to uh, we basically architecture the product in a certain way, and that's usually represented by concept models or work models. The closer, the smaller the gap between the concept model and a mental model, the more intuitive the experience would be. And the information architecture is based on the concept model. So in this case, right, so the mental model here was like a marketer thinks of a campaign, like we want to do a Diwali campaign, end of sales, end of year sales sort of thing. So that's a campaign. Within that, they send different types of messages. And like initially, some message could be to create the intrigue, something would be just to lead them, nurture the leads, and some of them would be exclusively on email, something the SMS. So that's the thing, right? The campaign is only a envelope for all the messages that are being sent within the campaign are connected by a intent. Like there could be Diwali campaign. There are different types of campaigns. However, in the system, how it was that if you, I mean, like even if there is a Diwali campaign, you will create it as a Diwali campaign 1, Diwali campaign 2, Diwali campaign 3, because each campaign can have only one type of message. So blue, let's say that's an SMS one, and basically it can have only one type of message. So this was clearly a problem at the information architecture. So the mental model was the campaign and then messages, and somehow the architecture was also designed correctly in the same way. However, the problem happened when we were designing the information architecture, and that was not at various. It was not a big problem also, but it was only at one place. You can see the one attribute type that was actually misplaced at the campaign level instead of being at the message level. Just by changing that and putting it in the right place, we were able to get the user experience very exactly same as the mental model of the marketing. And it's not about UI, it's not of the, like, of course, design is all about UI and visuals. And like contrary to that, like we were able to talk in terms of the architecture, and that's where like as a product design we was able to make a contribution here, and that really changed the whole experience. And you can see this was the old campaign creation page where the campaign type was the first attribute, and that we got rid of, and it had a very big implication because the whole product had to be re-architecture. I mean, like there were a lot of changes at the tech backend also that we need to make. And since we were able to show the return on investment, like how simplified the entire product would be, how robust the product would be, we were able to get that alignment with the tech team and the entire leadership there. So there were a lot of other things in the screen which you can see on the right side. The navigation was simplified. A lot of things were like you can see the subtext added. All these are like important parts of it. But here, what I really want to highlight here is that just by changing one important change here, we were able to change the entire product here. And similarly, the message campaign page, initially it started with creating an audience, then content and schedule. Here we since we put the message type here and we put it here like a these broadcast dynamic service. The one which is in the drop down here in the campaign page, that we brought it here. That made a whole difference. And not just that, like product, as a product designer, also it was because there were multiple people in the room, right from the leadership, also the product director and the tech lead and design director of the company. There was every one of them, and it was important to bring all of them on one page. And because it can be very difficult, like if you are just talking in terms of screens, the entire conversation could get hijacked into the color of the button or the roundness of the button or anything, or the content for that matter. So I started doing block diagrams, like product diagrams to define the product, right? And such visual representation of the product really helped the product team also to align within themselves also. When we were discussing, everyone had a different view about it, but everyone agreed to it. I mean, like there's a term called multi-aligned. So everyone was aligned, but they were aligned to different idea about the product. So putting a visual representation for the product actually really helped to get everyone on the same page, and that got us to get more projects. And so Engage Plus was just one product, and there was a suite of products, and so eventually we ended up making a product diagram for the entire suite, and of course in a very abstract way, and then also started seeing things at a system level, like started identifying some problems at the system level. Some of them we got aligned with the tech team, some of them we did not, and obviously there were some reasons for it. But we started looking at the problem at a very high level, and that was very important, and was making the entire suite more robust and flexible. And that got us in another project. So zooming into another project was Loyalty Plus. And this I'll not go into details of this, but I'll just tell what we were able to achieve. So the expert analysis of Loyalty Plus. In fact, we and we saw that the potential of the product was also not fully realized. Can you hear me? Hello? Okay. I hope there was no loss.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So how, I mean, like this represents exact thing what we were able to achieve at the end of this. So the existing product was able to do only tier-based, point-based loyalty programs, and things were not possible in the system, where exclusive loyalty, exclusive membership-based loyalty, conglomerate, coalition, friends and family, all these types of loyalty, but these were configured in the backend through code, and that was making it really difficult to expand the product to new geographies, and it was not visible on the UI. So the only thing visible in the UI was tier-based loyalty programs. And by the end of this, you're able to bring all of this into the UI, and then someone could configure an exclusive membership-based loyalty or a conglomerate loyalty or a coalition loyalty. Because at the end of the day, it's all about earning and burning some value, right? It was not points, it was not some rewards, it was a value. So but detail of this project is for some other day. But what I'm trying to say here is that if you go deeper into the product, you could actually achieve a lot more than just like nice look and feel, usability, discoverability, and all these things are like things still at the surface level, very important. But if you go a level deeper, you can achieve a lot more, right? And here's the last part of it. So I started as a UI designer, started seeing to ensure that user experience is better. User is not getting confused, making some UI, and then trying to make it not lot more good looking and inviting. Right, that's what I learned as a UI designer. But when it comes to UX design, like the Gummy Pop, I saw like customers really. I mean that time customers are speaking to us through data, of course, and it's very important to keep the customer in your mind, right? And that's where you become obsessed with the customer point of view, and you become the customer's advocate in a product team, right? And going a step further, like product designer is also a UX designer, plus is also a co-captain. Like if product manager is a captain of the ship, right? He's a co-captain of the ship, and he plays a very important role as well here, right? And that requires a lot of business sense and systems thinking and project management as well. So I'll just show you some examples which I do this. I mean, I do a lot of Excel sheets. I mean, like more than the design time is very less for me, but I do a lot of Excel sheets. So this was some project management, some sort of a status update to the team. Uh, and yeah, this was another project management. Like basically, I enjoyed doing Excel sheets, and these colors also adds a lot of value here. And go to extreme lengths to this is Gantt chart to explain. It helps to see how much of an effort, how much of bandwidth we have, and how much we can really achieve. This was about product prioritization. So here's this is called jobs to be done. So you can see that like usually we get when we get the product roadmaps, we get priorities of it, right? So as a UX designer, but as a product designer, you also work with the product manager and then uh, like discuss and then arrive at the right way of representing this priority. Example, it might be very unfair to say that in this case, like fixing the payroll bug is the most important thing in the product. Not exactly, right? And there could be equally important task at the experience team. So I've put it in this into buckets, and that helps to see things in a relative priority, right? And yeah, and this helps to get a buy-in also from the different team members. Yeah. And sometimes I've gone really to crazy lengths. This is one of the surviving pieces of representations. Sometimes a product manager is fine. I mean, like sometimes when I work with an agency, with some consulting some startups, it's very difficult to explain the importance of iterations, right? So this is what I was trying to explain, that like you'll be able to complete one module at the same time. It would require a second iteration, a third iteration, a fourth iteration, and that should not. I mean, that should not be confused with the timeline. So I was trying to put articulating about the concept of process and timeline together one place here. And yeah, and this was something which I did recently. Like I was working on a product which was almost three quarters into its first release, and it was not even in an MVP, right? And just sometimes just visualizing the state of the product, right? It gets the attention of the leadership, and also we get to see the real picture, real deal about the product, and then we can prioritize things much better, right? So like I sometimes like this is something which I do like sometimes like
Hi, Karthik. I think we lost you.
so and
Yeah, now you're back.
okay I'm more yeah. So where did you lose me here?
I think
I
just
was
you were
explaining
saying
the importance of
for a last
okay.
second.
I was trying to explain the importance of visualization of the things which we may already know. As I said, like everyone has a different perception about the same thing, but I mean, like people might get to 10 multi-align, and like that's a very dangerous thing to be, right? I mean, the superpower of visualization, which designer brings in into product management, it really gets everyone on the same page. Like when I show this, like somebody might conflict and say that like this is not how it is. Like I was looking at it this way. That's how it evolves. right? And it's not just about the UI. It's also about the product itself, right? And my understanding about product design is still evolving, and this is what I've learned so far. But recently, I've been also seeing it's not just a two-dimensional thing. It's probably multi-dimensional. It has a project management aspect and product management aspect as well. And I mean, probably there's more. There's also on the other side, there's marketing. On the other side, there's research. It could be a lot more things as well. But this is what I am exposed to and I'm learning so far. So that is what is my journey and learning about product design. Uh, so let me know if there are any questions. Are we on time?
Yeah, I think we have enough time for the questions now.
Okay.
Thanks, Karthik. I'll just start taking the questions, and everyone, you guys can post your questions in the chat window. You can also come up to the stage and ask your question yourself.
Okay.
So I'll start with the ones who have already posted, and then anyone who has a question can just go ahead and ask. Okay. So there's one question from Ayush. Ayush, do you want to come up and ask your question yourself? Okay, let me just take it up. So I am saying I'm working as product manager with Paytm. Just want to explore more on UX design and about gamification.
That's an interesting question. So, so when I was transitioning from game design to UX design, the very first thing that came to my mind was like, what is gamification, right? So you would have already read about these at various forums, blogs, and books as well. Like uh, gamification is like game-like elements into the user experience design. Things like a sense of progress and like some sort of creating motivation. And sometimes we're also designing punishment. Sometimes also intentionally adding some difficulties into the whole experience so that the user learns something. So I think what would be really helpful is to read Ralph Coaster. I'm just typing it in the um, there's a book by Ralph Coaster, which beautifully explains about UX design, gamification, and game design. Does that answer your question, Ayush? Hello.
Yeah, I think we can go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. What's the next question? As a senior product designer, what do you look for?
Yeah, Divya, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
I think I'll answer that. I got the question like, do I interview non-designers? So I haven't really interviewed any non-designers because usually I have been involved in hiring designers. But is a question about non-designers applying for the design role or for the non-design
And the
role?
question is more about how, if you have interviewed non-designer, what do you look for them, for the skills from them? If you have
Which role?
for the product designer role.
Okay. Okay. I think it's more important to see what projects people have worked on and then what learnings they have taken. It's not important to be successful all the time, right? It's also important to put projects which you have failed badly and what learning you have taken. And I really appreciate. I mean, I've done it in my previous company also when I was hiring. Really appreciated people who were explaining about what did they learn from the project rather than explaining, what and all they did. Right? I think being a learner is an important aspect uh, becoming a designer and should always be a learner.
Yeah, I think that should help. There's another question from Vardhan. So very useful, interesting session. Many thanks. Do you recommend any course?
Course. Okay. Course for product design.
Product design.
Hmm, I think it depends. Like, do you want to take a course just to land at a job as a product designer? In that case, like course should help to get to know the terminologies and then like what's the industry trend. But otherwise, it's always good to do your own like get involved in some project, right? And if your current place doesn't give you the enough opportunity to learn all these skills, you can always take up a pet project of your own and then take feedback from mentors. And I think that's the best way to learn. Do things yourself and take feedback. I mean, I'll give one thing about myself. At every stage when I was transitioning from an engineer to a game designer, from a game designer to a UI designer, so I always spoke to someone, in fact, to the level of like troubling them, showing them the screenshots, like, what do you think about this, sending them up presentations. If I look at some of the presentations which I made some earlier, if I look at some of the designs earlier, those are like terrible, right? And I think the best way to learn is to do things and then take feedback. And that's how you learn. And interesting thing, take feedback not just from the experts but also from people who don't have any context about what you're doing, right? And the reactions are, and don't take anything to your heart, but like that gives a lot of insights about like how we're able to communicate through the product. I think how it design.
Yeah.
Hope that answered.
Okay. So next one is from Ankur. Ankur, you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Have you used design sprints? I have a very basic question. It's functioning. How can you have stakeholders free themselves from the entire? Okay, awesome question.
Let me just ask it for everyone.
Uh-huh.
Have you used design sprints? I have a very basic question on its functioning. How can you have all stakeholders free themselves up for an entire week?
Yeah, I have used sprints. I've used Google Design Sprints, and I have read the book. I was excited about it. Okay, yes, we'll do design sprints. And as a consultant, you get. I mean, I did get some response on the first day, but from the second day, people have their calendars filled, and then people not attending the sessions, and it's been a very difficult thing. And that's how I mean, Google Design Sprints may work in very short, small startup kind of organizations, but at least the kind of organizations I worked with, it was an enterprise products, and then it had a lot more things to cater to, and that's how I discovered something called enterprise sprints. I mean, I have tried doing that, but I did not get any success there as well. So, I mean, my experience of sprints has been very bad and it has never worked for me. In fact, both the times I tried, people stop coming from the second and third day. It's only the design team that stays there. So, yeah.
Okay. So next question is from Divya. She's saying, thanks for the great session. I have one more question. In terms of prioritizing, where does accessibility stand while designing? What's the thought process?
Hmm. Hmm. I think accessibility, I mean, you say about, I think it's one of the very basic things when it comes to, let me try to answer this. Okay. So when, like, you must have heard about a metaphor called the big rocks and then putting the sand and the water in a jar, right? So when you put big rocks in a in a jar, it's still, I mean, it's like once it reaches a certain number of rocks, it's still fit. And then you put about sand in it, there's still space to accommodate, right? I think accessibility is a very finer detail, which may be missed out in the initial phases when you're doing the bigger things like product strategy and planning and all that, and it may be missed out in the early stages, but it's about the finer detail of any design project. That's how I think about it. But I mean, people might have a different opinion because I met one person uh, who was not who was actually uh, differently enabled, differently abled in his real life. And for him, the accessibility was the most important thing. And like we debated for quite a long time, and accessibility should be the very first thing that you should consider. And I think it depends on designer to designer how and what kind of experience you have been having. So in my case, like I will keep accessibility as a finer detail. Thank you.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that helps. Okay, so there's another question from Utkarsh. He's saying, what tools do you use if you plan design sprints? How do you track design work updates within the team? For example, engineering team uses Jira tickets.
Okay, I'll tell something about Jira. I've been trying my best to use Jira, and like it really never works for me. And this might be a complaint by many designers also. In fact, well, I always find Excel sheets to be very good communication. I like very good planning tool. Excel sheet, right? And I haven't found any good tool than Excel sheets for all the planning.
Okay. So next question is from Kshitij. He's saying, I'm an engineering student currently exploring UX design. I have done a couple of internship at startups. Any article I read on drafting effective case studies has a point to mention how did you measure the success of your design? But since my internships were short term and other projects are concept projects, how do I measure my designs? I think this is a great question, Sudhir. Karthik, I think you're having a network problem.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Fine. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm trying to read this. So he's an engineering student and he's exploring UX design, and he's done internship at startups and drafting effective case studies as a point to mention. How did you measure the success of the design? But since when? Okay. Hmm. I think this is a problem which I also used to see usually, like how do you measure the success of the project, like the, the scale which you put, that depends, like now whether you want to define the success metric in terms of some numbers. If you do it at the beginning of the project, like there should be a way to measure it as well. So ensure that like when you're starting it, you have some practical way of measuring the success of the project and get an alignment with the other stakeholders in the project. That might help, but it's not always possible, considering the uh, like when in an internship project. I don't know if you will get really that scope, but you can always do a qualitative check. We can keep certain metrics which are more on the qualitative side of it, and you can always check it with different people. You can test the design with them and then take a uh, note of it.
Okay. Thanks. So there's another question from so he's saying, if you are in a new company and find that the UI and UX of the product is not up to the mark, what should be the best strategy to get buy-in from all stakeholders? I think you answered it by telling that we should experiment and give feedback and
take feedback.
Where do designers get the inspiration to design? Question one. Question two, how many times do you iterate before deciding that the final result is something that can be shown to others?
Okay, the best strategy to get a buy-in from the stakeholders. I think you answered it by telling that experiment and take feedback. Yes. Designers. I think answering your first question, where do you take inspiration from? I don't know if inspiration is a thing for. I mean, like it might be a little contradict. I mean, like I would say controversial, but design is not always needs an inspiration. It always needs a problem to be solved. I mean, and inspiration inspires maybe art, maybe, but design needs to be, it's a science. It's more of a science, and it focus at solving a problem. And where do designers take inspiration from? It depends on the designers. Maybe if you are a designer who need an inspiration to solve a problem, I mean, you can always take the inspiration from whatever excites you. I'm like, I've seen that like inspiration is not a mandatory or necessary thing for solving a problem. And question 2, how many times do you iterate? Okay, so I have tried to arrive at the right number of iterations. I think more you delay, the urge to start doing the jumping to solution, lesser the iterations would be. I mean, that's a rule of thumb which I try to follow. Like maybe you might quickly get a solution, take feedback, but more you try to understand the concept or the problem, and then delay that first iteration of it. That's
Okay, I think we lost you again, Karthik. Karthik, we can't hear you. I think there's a problem with the network. Yeah, you're back now, but you're on mute.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know. There's some internet problems at my side.
No worries. Shall I take the next one?
Yeah.
So there's another question. During your presentation, you explained different drop-off rates while explaining the color of the buttons of the game. So how did you measure it?
Sorry, I didn't get it. How did I
How did
measure
you
it?
measure the drop-off rates while explaining the color of the buttons, right? You mentioned.
Okay, so the first, so you've seen the version numbers there, right? So we used to have version numbers. So we used to release every 2 weeks. So version 4.1, 4.2, 4.3. So like that it used to go. And then the drop-off rate, average drop-off rate of the that pop-up for the first 10 levels were about 50% till a certain version release. And then we discussed among our team, and then we decided that, like, let's change the color of the button, and that should so in the next release when we're doing it, in the next release, and we target certain customers, and then we see that like the average drop-off rate is much lower. We see that this release seems to be working much better. So let's release it for the entire 100% of the players. So usually you release it for the first 100 customers or 200 customers, and then you expand it for the rest of it. That's how you check it.
So was it using Google Tag Manager or something else? There's a follow-up question on the same. So when you measure the drop-off rates, was it using Google Tag Manager or something else?
Okay, this I might not be really able to answer because I think it's more of a technical question. There was some in-game instrumentation that was done by the developers. It was a certain framework, and it had its own instrumentation tools there. Google Tag Manager, maybe they might have used, but I am not aware of that.
Sure. Okay. So there's another one from Anuj. He's saying, how should product managers incorporate product design practice at an early stage B2B startup?
I think it's the responsibility of the designers who are in the team. I mean, it's important to get a designer on board.
Okay. But
I think, yeah, go ahead.
I think the point he wants to make is that an early stage startup might not be having a product designer, and the responsibility might lie on a product manager because again, it's an early stage and they do not have a big team. So how can that be incorporated?
I think, yeah, if that is the case, I think it's always I would say that like there is always a bias that will come in, right? As a manager, you might be biased with certain things, and it could be difficult uh, uh, to completely think from a designer's point of view, and might bring in some design practices. What you could consider is a design consultant or a design agency that might help because uh, that will also provide you an completely external perspective to your product, and it could be short term as well, and that might save a lot of your time and money.
Yeah, sure. Another one is from Arvind. He's asking any insights on differences while approaching user base, which belongs to NBU segment.
I'm sorry, what is NBU segment?
I'm not sure. Arvind, can you let us know?
Okay, any insights on the
Next billion users.
Next
Okay.
billion users. I mean, I've been reading a lot about next billion users. Like someone who is the first time user. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is it the first time user of the digital? First time user of the digital experience. Is that correct? Non-urban. Okay. 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 So now I've not worked on any products which actually dealt with uh, a non-urban or a first-time user of a digital product yet. But the challenges might be different here, I'm sure. And
Karthik, we lost you again. Okay, so we'll just wait for your network to get back.
hello.
Yeah, you are back.
Okay, I do not have any particular insights about the differences between the regular user base and the NBU segment because I have not worked on any products based on that. And if I have to work on this, it's safe to not assume things and ensure that you talk to a good number of customer base, and that will give you a lot of insights. And always go with an open mind and uh, be the hypothesis, but be ready to let go of such as answer for you.
Yeah. Okay, so we have two last questions and then we will end the sessions. There's a follow-up question from Anuj that how should a PM evaluate a product designer?
I think it's a very you'll always go and find out a lot of what are things to look in a product designer in an interview that you will easily get an answer. But as a PM, you should get a feeling that this guy is your wingman, right? I mean, it's about that gut feeling also. Sometimes you'll get a lot of intellectual answers on the forums, blog posts, in different places. But I think if you are evaluating a product designer, it's about the right chemistry which you have, and it's about how you feel about working with that person. I think that's an important thing.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so the last one is from Kshetrij. When do you know that you have researched enough?
I mean, I do not know. I do not know. I think if you don't, but what I can say here is that if the number of questions, open-end questions which you have is becoming lesser and lesser. Like each phase of your research, you might have some open questions, and if those number of questions is coming down, uh, and it's never going to be zero. And I think if it is coming down and we just maybe tired of research, or like you feel that like the research is enough, I think your number of questions, open questions, are lesser. I think that's where you're done the right enough research. I think I'm maybe it's something which even I need to learn as well. There's a book called Just Enough Research by Erica Hall, and it's one of my reading list. I have not read it yet, so it's something which I have to learn. I have done a lot of research, but like it tends to go for a longer period of time. That happens.
Okay. Thanks, Karthik. There's another one. There's another request from Vardhan that will you be comfortable sharing the Excel sheet you use? They look great. So the
Excel
template
sheet.
showing, basically.
I mean, I use Excel sheet for a lot of things, right? So project planning, research, synthesis. Which one you're asking for?
So I think the templates you were showing as part of your deck, that's what
Uh-huh.
I was referring to. Yeah.
Yeah, you can create one. I don't know if I can share it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I hope that answers your question, Vardhan.
I mean, I can create a master class on that, like how to create great Excel sheets for planning as a designer.
Yeah, I think that can be a follow-up session. Yeah. Okay. So I think, yeah, we had a great session. Thanks for all the insights, Karthik, and thanks for all the great questions and engagement to our attendees. We'll meet you soon on our next session. Thank you, Karthik, for being the guest here. Thank you.
Thank you.